Are you winning, son?
Oh, they got my jam! Ow!
I got the message from the State Department.
No!
All bridges and some roads in the Vice City.
Vice City is one of those games that I think doesn't get enough love or attention from anyone outside of the hardcore GTA fan base. In fact, many GTA players these days, mainly GTA Online players, doesn't even really know about Vice City, never really played it, just heard about it in passing. And honestly, it's a damn shame because I feel that Vice City, I would argue that it's better than GTA 3, and in fact, I'd argue it's better than GTA 5. And I really do mean that. Vice City is one of Rockstar's most promising and daring games to hit the PlayStation 2. According to an interview from Digital Trends with Leslie Benzies, Vice City was originally supposed to be a mission pack for GTA 3. And that right there is important. That right there gives us a lot of context and backstory to why Vice City is so great. Vice City wasn't meant to be a standalone game. Vice City was never meant to be a game to make millions of dollars and set records. GTA 3 did all of that, and all they wanted to do was just take all the stuff that they couldn't fit in GTA 3 or didn't have the time to develop and put it into the game at the end in a DLC pack. That's all they wanted to do, and they ended up coming up with so many ideas and so much stuff, and their passion kicked in so much they decided that we need to make a full-on title, a sequel, not just a DLC pack. So Vice City, at its roots, is just a mission pack for GTA 3, but it took it and enhanced it so much that it doesn't even compare, despite running on the same engine, the same graphics, and the same hardware. Everything GTA 3 lacked: bikes, helicopters, functioning planes, and even a speaking protagonist, Vice City had all of that. We all know the real reason people play Vice City isn't for the clubs, or the Lance Vance dance, or the Chef Mafia. It's all about that sweet soundtrack. Hey, what's up? It's your buddy Retro Video Gamer Nerd here. Are you guys excited? I'm excited. I'm very excited. I just surpassed 10,000 subscribers on my YouTube channel. Thank you guys so much. Please donate to my Patreon. Today we're counting on the top 10 video game soundtracks of all time. Number 1, Vice City. How could you not love Vice City? You have amazing music from boomers like Judas Priest, Motley Crue, Iron Maiden, Quiet Riot, Tears for Fears, Blondie, Flock of Seagulls, Mr. Oates, Holland Oates. I love that guy. Grandmaster Flash, Run DMC, Rick James, Fat Larry's Band, and even Michael Jackson before he was accused of being a pedo for the second time.
We love Michael so much, we let the first kid slide.
Before we get any further in this video, I'm going to have to ask you to like, comment, subscribe, and donate to my Patreon and become a YouTube member. And as always, let's do it! Vice City had the best soundtrack of any video game, not just for 2002, but of all time. And it's hard not to be biased when talking about Vice City. It was a big part of my childhood. It influenced my music taste and it even influenced my YouTube channel. I've had the same profile picture with the Flash FM inspired logo since 2017, and before that it actually was the Flash FM logo. I have had the same outfit on my GTA character since 2015, and I've been listening to 80s music since I first played Vice City back in 2002 at just 4 years old. We grew up on games like Vice City and San Andreas, so it's hard not to be biased when talking about them. The rose-tinted glasses are on at all times when playing Vice City. Look, I may disagree with Rockstar in the present time, their decision to focus on microtransactions in their parent company, Take-Two, sending private investigators to modders and beta hunters' homes really and truly makes it hard to be a Rockstar Games fan. But when playing this game, it takes me back in time. Michael Jackson is still alive. Ray Liotta isn't doing Chantix commercials. Leslie Benzies, Dan Houser, and Laszlo still had jobs at Rockstar. The Oppressor Mark II never even existed. Which is funny in hindsight because GTA Online actually takes a lot of ideas from Vice City. In GTA Online, the whole point of the game is to build, or pay for, a criminal enterprise. We spend our time exporting stolen cars, selling drugs and counterfeit money, and driving slow-ass vans making multiple deliveries. And if you take a look at Vice City, it had all of this. It was the building blocks for GTA Online. Import-export is just Sunshine Autos. The cocaine lockup is the boatyard. Counterfeit cash is Printworks. The post-op and Trashmaster cell missions remind me of Cherry Poppers. It's all there. GTA Online's roots trace all the way back to Vice City, but you don't realize it until you decide to dust off your old copy and play it one day. Or maybe it's your first time ever playing Vice City and experiencing it, you're playing it on the iOS version. But this isn't a review of Vice City. Most of us have played it before. Vice City does have a good story, but who cares? You cannot play for more than 5 minutes and not think about Scarface or Miami Vice, and from that point on, you're playing those roles. That was a direct quote from Leslie Benzies, the producer on Vice City. And he's right. There isn't one thing that makes Vice City great. It's a lot of little things. The 80s color palette, the reimagining of Vice City, pop culture references, the soundtrack, the cars, The voice acting, new wave, synthesizers, rock, Scarface, Miami Vice, cocaine, guns, Murica, childhood, Capri Sun, pizza rolls, Brady games, VHS tapes, Blockbuster, Spider-Man, Toy Story, Fair Odd Parents. You remember when Jared from Subway wasn't a creep? When you bring up Vice City, you also bring all of that along with you. Every game's developer is looking for the next GTA 3, the next Modern Warfare, games that changed everything. And Vice City is one of those games that gets shadowed by its bigger brother, and most people haven't even played it like I said earlier. It's basic as bricks, but it puts you in a mindset that no other GTA has yet to achieve. I can relate to Nico Bellic, I can relate to Michael, but those games don't immerse me into their roles the way Vice City did. Liberty City may immerse me and feel like a believable place, and I may relate to Nico Bellic, but Vice City puts me into the role of Tommy Vercetti, because you're not really playing Tommy Vercetti, let's be honest. You're playing as Tony Montana. You're playing Miami Vice, the video game. And if you watch a TV show or watch that movie, you're playing that role. You feel like Tony Montana. You live in his mansion. It is the greatest game Rockstar have ever created, right up there with Red Dead Redemption and GTA 4. And I can say that confidently because this isn't a review for a gaming website. I'm not a journalist. YouTube isn't my job. I'm not being objective. I can't be objective when talking about Vice City. Because my fun isn't measured by graphics, or features, or online components, or microtransactions, or DLC, or any of that. I can care less about that as long as the game is fun and memorable and the people that developed it actually cared. And Vice City is for the most part. Most of you GTA Online players don't know how hard it was being a GTA fan back in the day. If you guys want to play GTA, you go into the game store and you download it. That's it. There's no ID check to download GTA 5. And that, for the most part, is why GTA Online makes so much money with its microtransactions. It's kids and young teens. My generation, we didn't have it that easy. We had to convince and beg our parents to buy us a physical copy of the game at GameStop. Or maybe some of you had a cool uncle that would just sneak you a copy for your birthday or Christmas. I vividly remember playing my father's copy of Vice City as a kid and stumbling across the Pole Position Club. My mother walked into the living room and she threw a fit. She then ejected the disc out of my PlayStation just to see a woman in a bikini on the cover. I had to beg her and promise her that I would never, ever, ever enter that club again, and I just wanted to drive around in cool cars and listen to the music. And that memory stuck with me forever. I'll never forget it.
Hey, I might as well butt in at this point. Thank you for inviting me, Gypsy. First, I want to say that the soundtrack of Vice City is amazing. People have asked me before what my favorite GTA soundtrack is, and I always go back and forth between Vice City, San Andreas, and Vice City Stories, which is the most underrated GTA by far. All three games had soundtracks that were, in my opinion, close to perfection, but Vice City's was especially amazing for its time. Super high budget, considering how just a year before the most famous songs they could afford to license were songs from Scarface and everything else was either virtually unknown or created in-house. And something about pretty much every song featured just fits the game perfectly. Whenever I hear one of the songs outside of the game, which is quite often since it had a lot of famous songs, I always immediately think of Vice City. I should mention that Vice City influenced numerous aspects of my life too. Music taste for sure. Also, Tommy Vercetti's default outfit, the palm print shirt, might have influenced how I dress in the summer. I've been hunting for a shirt exactly like his for years, and I've found something close, but not exact. But it's nonetheless a really good looking shirt, and I would have to agree that Ken is wrong for dissing his outfit. Vice City also got me into Miami Vice and Scarface, both of which my parents were highly familiar with and were big fans of. But if you asked me what those were before I played Vice City, I wouldn't have had a clue. When I realized that those two were the game's main influences, it made me want to seek out both. And now Scarface is probably one of my favorite movies, and Miami Vice is pretty much the definitive 1980s television series. It's really good too, and I highly suggest everyone check it out. I don't think Miami Vice gets enough credit for being the influence it was on Vice City either. Besides the fact that it's clearly where they got the city's name from, the dynamic between Tommy and Lance honestly kind of reminds me of Crockett and Tubbs from a criminal perspective instead of a cop perspective. In fact, the actor who played Tubbs also played Lance Vance, so anyone familiar with Vice City who watches Miami Vice is pretty much going to be right at home with the show. Ray Liotta as Tommy Vercetti was an iconic performance, despite the apparent antagonism brewing behind the scenes between he and Rockstar, but I kind of wonder now what the game would have been like if Tommy Vercetti had been voiced by Don Johnson, aka Crockett. I had better luck playing Vice City when I was younger. I was admittedly a little late to the party, since I only first played it in the summer of 2004, when San Andreas was set to be released just a few months later. I didn't have a PS2. I only first got to play the game because my uncle owned a copy for Xbox, and when he left the country, he told my dad that I could borrow some games. And he only had Vice City and like one other game that I can't even remember, but my dad brought both over, which is funny because when the game came out, he was actually against the idea of me playing it, but 2 years later it was alright. I'm gonna assume he saw my uncle playing it at some point, and when he realized that it's basically a Miami Vice video game, he probably warmed up to it a little. And when I popped that disc in and got my first taste of a virtual 1980s Miami, it was a moment that pretty much changed my life. And the best thing is, my mom never walked in on me doing anything except for when I was driving, and she loved the music that was playing on the radio and said it was great that I was hearing the music that she heard in the 80s. And I think she knew the game was violent. She watched the news back then, but she was fine with me playing it since I wasn't running around saying I was going to be a drug dealer like Tommy when I grew up. But if you think about it, the overall message of the game is still a good one. Work hard, set your goals, be smart about your choices and who you surround yourself with, and be confident enough to stare down your biggest problems before taking them on directly. I think the game arguably had a positive influence on me.
Playing GTA was hard as a kid. You had dumb lawyers like Jack Thompson trying to get it banned entirely by spewing stupid statements like, guns don't kill people, video games do. You had the Cuban-Haitian crisis going on with Vice City at the time and them trying to get it pulled on shelves because they were calling it racist. You had a teen going and shooting up a police station in real life and then blaming Vice City on it, and Jack Thompson used that as ammo to try to get the game removed from shelves. GTA had a very hard time actually coming up to be the success that it is today. And trust me, our parents see this on the news, they've seen all of this. So it made it that much harder to even get a copy of the game to play it. Every time my family took me to GameStop, the employee would tell them, "Are you sure you want to buy this for your child? It has violence and sexual themes." As if a 5-year-old really knows what that means or even knows how to engage in those parts of the game. We lived in a different time. Parents used to actually raise their children instead of letting an iPad do it for them. America came together as a country. It wasn't about your race or your gender. It was about being American. 9/11 brought the whole country together a year prior to this game coming out. Everyone realized that even we might be a target and to cherish our loved ones. It was a different time, and I missed that time. Yes, we had tragedies, and yes, things weren't as great as they are now, but everything just felt more real. We were all connected. Parents actually raised their children. We didn't have all these stupid arguments about race and gender and everything that's going on today. But do you remember when this video was talking about Vice City? I lost direction, and it seems like Rockstar have also lost direction in recent years. But this one little game on the PS2 back in the early 2000s takes you back to a time when they knew what they were doing, when they used to innovate the genre and bring new things to the table. Rockstar was leading the way for gaming instead of just re-releasing the same game over and over again. They actually made new games. Now both Leslie Benzies and Dan Houser don't work at Rockstar, and recently Laszlo has left the company as well. All three of these people have been with the company since the very beginning, since like the early days, since GTA 3. Laszlo has been in every single GTA since GTA 3, who's even an actual player. He even had an actual character model in GTA 5. He was in the nightclub update for GTA Online. He was on the radio in every single GTA. And he recently left the company. After Dan Houser left and Leslie Benzies got blackballed and was basically forced to quit. And now Rockstar's main focus is a 7-year-old title getting re-released again because of the online component. Red Dead Redemption 2 was great, but look at its online component. Look at GTA Online. Rockstar Games is not the same company it was back in the day, but this game has transcended its name. We don't think of it as a GTA game. It's just Vice City. And the one thing that makes Vice City so different from any other GTA ever produced is one thing. It's a passion project. Vice City was originally just a DLC pack for GTA 3. It was made by fans of Scarface and Miami Vice, clearly. And they were so keen on making that experience, that decade, so real and so accurate in their own world that they accidentally developed a game that in many ways transcends its predecessors. Just look at Love Fist. They could have just made a single mission and been done with it. But instead they made an asset with multiple missions, and they developed a concert hall, and they recorded in-house music for the band that plays on the radio. That amount of dedication, right there, really immerses me into the world and makes Vice City a believable place. They recorded almost 2 hours of talk radio that is hilarious and interesting and has many of the main characters from the story talking on there. And it makes Vice City a more believable place. But listen, Rockstar have always been great at attention to details and making their worlds believable. But Vice City doesn't just make its world believable. You are playing a role. You believe the role. You are Tony Montana. You play the role of a drug lord. Ray Liotta was a fucking great choice for that role. He was perfect for it. There's only a couple roles that I think throughout history was perfect and those people were just born to play those roles. Ray Liotta was born to to play in Goodfellas and Vice City. James Gandolfini was born to play Tony Soprano. And I really believe that Vice City is something they'll never achieve again. At the end of the day, Rockstar is a business and they gotta do what makes money, obviously. But it seems that the passion they once had before is done. It's dead. If GTA Online, the PS5, doesn't prove that to you, I really don't know what will. Vice City wasn't meant to be a big game with Hollywood actors and a multi-million-dollar budget. It was just a DLC pack for them to develop GTA 3 to the fullest extent, their original passion and vision for it. And it turned out to be so much more, and I am so thankful for that. Vice City will always hold a special place in my heart, and I am so glad I got to experience it for what it was back in the day, even as a kid.